Hello and welcome to this video, which is part 2 of what is wrong with contemporary music. So if you haven't watched part 1, then go and watch it, because I'm not going to recap. I'm going to kick right in. So let's carry on with the idea of cultural change. Okay. Let's for the sake of argument look at the cultural change that happens in the early 1920s, 1922. Right? There's a shift. And we enter the modern era, and the modern era that lasts up until about 1962, and there's a definite shift. If you look at an interview with somebody talking in the 1950s, then look at someone talking in the 1930s, it's very similar people. But if you look at someone talking in the 1960s and then just compare them 10 years before the 1950s, everything's changed. We're not just talking about music here, we're talking about modern culture's change. And that shift seems to sort of cycle around 1962, which is 40 years later, isn't it? Right? So the modern era, we could say, lasts for 40 years. If you then go 40 years forward, you go to 2002. And I would argue that almost music freezes at that point in terms of culture. Popular music, and by that I mean jazz and blues, all of it, has produced legendary artists all the way through that 40 years period. From the 60s we have the Doors and Jimi Hendrix and the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. 70s we have Led Zeppelin, Sex Pistols, we have Blondie and Kraftwerk. 80s we've got Prince and Madonna and Duran Duran and the Police. 90s we've got Nirvana, we've got Radiohead, Rage Against the Machine, we've got pop music wise, we've got Oasis and all that Britpop stuff. We've got huge bands like NSYNC and all those sort of girl and boy bands, Spice Girls and all that. These are all bands that you could put on the front of an encyclopedia of popular music. Who have we got after 2002? Just give me somebody. Are you shouting Beyonce at me? No, she's emerged before then. That's 90s. Jay-Z's 90s. Right, what we've got, all the artists you can name, right, are legacy artists. Then you have the Kanye Wests. And then you have, rappers and then modern pop music, Ed Sheeran, Adele, right? All these artists for me are different to the artists that we mentioned before. And how are they different? Well, they're operating in a different world. They've become a success through their ability to be media artists. Now this has its roots in popular music. Madonna is the same thing, right? So when we see the advent of MTV in the 1980s, music shifts and it stops being about the music. It starts to being about the visual, the spectacle. Michael Jackson is an absolute genius, but his real genius was to be able to hop on the sort of MTV roller coaster, and he became the most successful artist in history by doing that. The combination of the visual with the music becomes really, really important. When digital technologies kick in, and we really can see that starting to let's just look at that as a millennium, So the internet emerges in the 90s. I first actually sat and saw the internet in 1997. At this point, it's all about words, it's all websites with information, At some point, the idea that you can, transmit audio starts to come in. We have that whole Napster thing in the early 2000s, and that starts to slowly change. But I would say 2000s is where it starts to happen. YouTube comes in that decade, Spotify comes in that decade, or digital file sharing comes in. And by the 2010s, we have the structure of how music's going to be distributed and marketed in place. I got a website in that decade, and I can remember when I first set up my website, it was literally getting millions of views because there wasn't that many drummers on there. It was in the dial-up era, and I managed to get some drum videos up there that you could download. They were literally 10 seconds long, and it would take you probably 20 minutes to download. But they were getting millions of hits of hungry people out there that just wanted to get some sort of free drumming, you know. People still back then had the idea that the commodity that we make, it should be paid for. So when they got something for free, they held on to it, you know. This is back in the era, if you were a band and you made a CD and you gave your friend that CD, they would go home and keep that CD and put it in their collection because they valued it. You know, the record companies, you know, jumped on this, and they, you know, as the internet started to kick in, they believe that they get through it just by raising the prices of the albums. You know, I can go back into my collection and where I've still got the prices on, to, you know, in the early 2000s, albums were like costing 15 quid or $20. It was incredible. You know, the record companies did not react quick enough. You know, unlike film and media, you know, that they've been able to harness things like Netflix and really been able to make some serious cash out of it because they changed. They were slow to move, but nowhere near as slow as the record companies. It's a shock to me that say Sony is not now a great big online shop where you can download and stream Sony artists. I cannot believe it. I cannot believe that Warner Brothers or whoever haven't got that. I cannot believe it, that they let other people come in, Apple, iTunes, let them come in and take over the distribution of music. That is a shock. And that the money that then was made was no longer going to go back into the music industry. It was going to go back into Apple, and now it goes back into Spotify. I'm not here to criticise Spotify or Apple. I don't think I have an issue with them at all. And I've done a video elsewhere where I discuss Spotify. I think that is, you know, I'm not being political here. I'm not going to be right wing or left wing. I think that's a bit of a left wing argument. You know, it's just seeing, oh, they're a big corporation, they make lots of money, you know. And that breaks down when you start to analyse it, you know. The left tend to support, you know, I mean, they're supporting Disney at the moment. So I don't want to get into that. You know, I think if you enter into the music business, then you have to be aware you're entering to a business which is about making profit. Spotify's about making profit. I cannot see anything in what they do which is ripping anybody off. It's a model that you can use or you don't use, and the reason why people use it is because the record companies make money out of it. Believe me, they do, because the cut's 60%. You know, you cannot complain. You know, it's still this thing that the I've just talked about on the other video, where the music industry is using the old way of doing things to model the new way of doing things. So in the old days where record companies would have to, you know, develop the artists, put them in a recording studio, pay the recording studio, pay photographers, make a video, do all that, and then recoup their costs. A record deal, you would be coming out with something like 10-15% of the profits. The trouble is that when they bang artists on Spotify, they're still doing the same thing. They're taking 10-15% of that 60% cut that Spotify offer. So it's much more financially better for the artists to own their own tracks and put them up. But of course, how do you get around that without that incredible media push that you need? And this comes back to the Kanye Wests and the Adeles. You know, these are media artists, right? Musicians become media artists. They're like film stars or television stars. They're cultural. To make a lot of money, you have to be a cultural icon. You have to be iconic. You have to be a Lady Gaga. Right, that was there in music before, but in the end, the music was the end result. If you liked Madonna, you would then still have to go and buy the album if you supported Madonna, and that's where the profit was. You know, by the time Madonna gets to Like a Prayer and she's got the weight of the talent of the music industry behind her, there's some sublime tracks. You know, I think Like a Prayer is a work of pop genius if you go and listen to it. Because that's where the money was, you know, it was in the songs. The money's not so much in the songs anymore, all right? The money's elsewhere, you know. The money's going to be in the video. It's going to be on the stuff being streamed. It's going to be on all the cuts you get for it being on different media sites. It's going to be in the huge lavish tours where the tickets are like $100 or $200. It's elsewhere now. You know, gigs used to be a place where artists would promote the album. So they, you know, I can remember going to gigs of massive artists and paying £10 to get in because they wanted you in there to watch the artist. So you would go and buy the album. Now, you know, you're going to make more money on buying the T-shirts. You're going to get more money on buying the merchandise. Artists who are huge are not necessarily music artists anymore. They're media artists. This is what you have with an Adele or an Ed Sheeran. Their personal life is as important as the music they make. Okay? If you are interested in making music and listening to music, right now here, I finally get to what I think is wrong with contemporary music, is if you're interested in making creative music, the very structure that once existed has gone. Right, so let's back up to the old way of doing things. In the old ways of doing things, you made an album and someone went and bought that album. They took that album home and they put it on a record player. Even if you had a cheap record player, that was something that sat in the middle of your living room and had two speakers that blasted and filled that room with stereophonic sound. You could buy a set of big fat headphones and put them on and you could sit there and go into the music that way. But the music device was in the centre of the home. This is true in my house. That's the house I grew up in as a kid. My dad was into jazz, and most nights we didn't watch television. My dad would put albums on and we would sit there and listen to the album all the way through. We would listen to the story that it told from beginning to end, right? In plush stereo, right? Not digital. Analog music, a vinyl record, you know, vibrating a needle and sending music out to the speakers. You know, it was a different sound. You know, studies have shown that digital music itself is not as appealing and as listenable as analog music. Music's on cassette tape and vinyl. It's not the same. It really isn't the same. And when digital music came out, that was a part of the problem in marketing it. People noticed it. You know, there's a story about, you know, artists that use music for meditation that they no longer worked anymore. And this is definitely the case. You know, a few years ago, I pulled out a really old record player and stuck the vinyl on, and I was shocked at the difference. Yes, it did have the quality of CD. But it had something else that made it more appealing. It was easier on the ears. We weren't listening to music that had been chopped up a million times. We were hearing something vibrating. You know, we were hearing something happening in real time. You know, that's a big change, right? For the revolution to happen digitally, they had to find ways of compressing that audio. Proper digital audio files are huge because they've got so much information in. But we get MP3 come out, MP4, MP3. These files are compressing the sound. Okay, you won't hear it if you're listening to it on a pair of tinny little headphones or listening to it on the speaker of your phone or on the laptop. You won't hear it. But you put it through a soft, proper system and you will really hear it. But nobody cares anymore. There was a sacrifice when we moved to digital. And you know what that sacrifice was? The sacrifice was the music. It was the listening experience. And we removed from the heart of the family, from the heart of the social living space, this idea that music was there in the middle of it, that you could sit at home and put a record on and sit back and that was your evening's entertainment. Now, people of our age are still doing that. Many of you who watch this channel will do that. That will be your thing, all right? And that's why you're here watching this channel, because my channel is about that. It's like going, oh, remember when people used to do this? And we're the dying breed. We're the dying breed that does that. But are the kids that are coming in, how are they perceiving music? You know, now kids are still really interested in music, and I have students, and it's not hard to play them Weather Report and for them to get excited about that, and they want to listen to it. But that experience has changed, because what they do is they can just go onto Spotify, and every single Weather Report album's there. There'll be a Weather Report playlist, right? And so they can put it on. If they don't like that first track, they'll click onto the second track. And if they don't like it, they'll move on. When I was a kid, right? And this is really old man chat, you know, you're going to hear when I was a kid. When I was a lad, we would spend all our month's wages on album, and then we'd put it on And even if we didn't like it, we'd listen to it, which is the case. There's so much music that I love because what I did was buy albums that I didn't get and then play them until I got it. Right? I would listen into the cracks of the albums. I would listen to the tracks where the musicians weren't doing what they normally did. If they were exploring other areas, the album would tell me a story that I would follow, and I would follow that story. You know, I would sit there with the lyrics. Okay? Now we're in a situation where the way you break an artist will be with video. Right, so here's some advice to every little musician out there that wants to get their music out there. Your music will not break out there. The music won't do it. Okay? Unless for some reason you get played on the radio, maybe, but I don't even think that will do it. You'll just get lost in the mix. You're going to break out because of video. You need video on TikTok, or you need it on Instagram, or you need it on YouTube. This channel is a testament to that. You know, I am an artist. You know, I've spent my whole life making music. I've played on albums. You know, I've played in bands, and I've made my own music. But suddenly, I'm carving out now another life. Because of video, I am slowly becoming a video artist, a media artist. You know, I'm having to learn how to talk to camera. I need to learn how, because I haven't yet, how to edit video properly and put titles on it. I can do all that, but it's a huge job to do, right? And I've learned a lot doing this YouTube. You know, I really believe that there is no such thing as a musician anymore that works in the music business. I don't think there's a music business anymore. I think what there is a media world, and music plays a part of it, like acting and script writing, camera work, photography. And that world has all come together. And then you've got computer games, you've got digital technologies. Every single, you know, computer games company has a huge department that makes music, you know, which contains musicians and composers and producers. Okay, that's the world in which we live. You know, music has now folded inside media. If you want to be a jazz fusion artist, you have to then go to the media world, right? Which is out there on YouTube, and this is a cowboy world. It's not at the moment. It still hasn't coalesced into something, you know, that is established business, you know, because the record companies didn't move. You know, if you're a fusion artist now, you want to get on Rick Beato or you want to get on Adam Neely, because they're the people who are going to break you. You know, I'm perfectly aware that if Rick Beato's watching my channel now and he liked it and he mentioned it, this channel would be made. Okay, so when you go back and look at the Kanye Wests and the Adeles, remember that they're operating in that world. Right, they're not operating in the world of making an album. They make out that they've got a new album come out. But album, that word should be swapped for campaign. Because that's what it is. It's not the album title isn't the title of an album, it's the title of a campaign. And that campaign will be like a media story. You know, this artist has got through their terrible divorce, or they've got through their terrible drug habit, and now they're back on track, and here they are with this new campaign where they're going to go and tell the world about their personal life and what it's all about, and where they come from, what they think and what they do and how they feel. All right? It was always there to some extent, but I'm pretty, you know, I'm pretty sure when I was very young, you know, Boogie Nights by Heatwave, that album, I ain't got a clue about the people's personal lives on that album. It's just an amazing album. It was topping the charts because the music was brilliant. But now that's not the case. For an artist, they can put their heart and soul into making a record. And yes, they can make it at home for a fraction of the price in their bedroom. And when it's finished, you know, they can do the artwork themselves and they can stick it up on Bandcamp, which is a fantastic place for artists. And the deal will be great and you won't get ripped off. But nobody will listen to it. Right? That album is something that exists on the side, the periphery. There's been a change, right? And we are no longer dealing with a music industry which has its interests in music. And I don't know, and this is what I feel could well be wrong, I don't know if we are now cultivating an anti-listening, music listening experience. You know, without the high quality audio. See, the film industry hasn't done that. They have been able to make a ton of money by selling huge TV screens with surround sound systems, you know, and where you want to spend a monthly payment to Netflix to get stuff in, you know, 4K, you know, in surround sound and have an experience and sit down and have that experience. Have we actually lost that with music? Has music just become the background to adverts? And by adverts I mean in the widest sense. That is really what is wrong. And for musicians who are creatively involved in making music, we no longer really have the place where a creative statement of self-expression can be made, backed up by companies that are interested in marketing that expression. You know, in itself, that musical expression. Is that perhaps the thing that has gone wrong? So yes, I'm at the end of this video. It's part 2. I'm sorry about the clickbaity title. I probably seem like I have argued the positives and the negatives. But that's the way it has to work. Those titles that I put on my videos have to be like sensationalist to bring people to watch them. And I've learnt this. You know, I have become somebody offering, you know, trying to operate within the world of media. You know, where I will say things just to make you click. And then when you click, I will say things just to make you stay. I will try and draw you in so that my adverts can pop up and I can make my money that way by holding you there, holding your attention, which is so ephemeral and wants to go at any moment. It wants to slip away and go somewhere else, and I'm fighting to hold you here. Well, if I've held you here that long, thank you very much. And if you like this video, like. And if you want to subscribe. And I'm saying the thing that I always have to say at the end of the video, or you will not be drawn into watching another video in that hot hypnotic thing that we all know is going on. And maybe that is what is wrong with the music industry right now. Thank you for watching. Bye.